The problem is I probably believe that, but I don't know. I'm amazed at my own belief and I don't understand it. Like, because I've seen.
I'm gonna pause right here. It's gonna get emotional. Hello friends, welcome to Look and Live. You are now here with Pastor James Devalon, and this is another reaction video. This is something different we are going to react to today. The man that we are going to react to, his name is Jordan Peterson. All right, Jordan Peterson is a significant person to me for a number of reasons. By the way, Jordan Peterson is a Canadian clinical psychologist, YouTube personality, author, and a professor of emeritus at the University of Toronto. All right, much more could be said about him. I really want to get to the heart of today's message because I want to hear what Jordan Peterson had to say. He had a video entitled "Why I Am Not an Atheist Anymore." So Jordan Peterson was once an atheist, a staunch atheist, did not believe in God. But that has changed over time. And this testimony is worth taking a listen to. And I thought as he speaks, I will pause and kind of respond and react to the video. It's about 18 minutes long, so expect about 23 or 25 minutes in this video or more. And I want to I think this will speak volume to many people who are struggling in their faith. So without anything else being said, let's get to the heart of the message.
So people often ask me, do you believe in God? Which I don't like that question. I don't like that question. I don't like that question. Yeah, I don't like the question. People have asked me whether or not I believe in God, and I've answered in various ways. No, but I'm afraid he probably exists. That's... The traditions bind the community together. Now, I'm saying that, and I don't go to church, and the reason I don't go to church is because, well, it drives me crazy, to speak frankly. I haven't been able to sit in a situation like that ever since I was, well, ever, really.
And the truth is, most people will not go to church unless they really understand the nature of a relationship with God and they understand the purpose of church congregation. Most time we avoid churches for these reasons is because we don't fit. We feel like we cannot sit in the church, and there are other reasons as well. There are judgmental people in church as well. That could be other reasons, and there could be there are some churches that are very strange. I'm so glad this is not the case for our church, but there are some churches that are doing some very strange things, and I would say stay away from that. But the real reason, though, at the heart of all reasons, most people will avoid the church, at least a decent church, a good church, a church that has really good, honest Christians, is because their spiritual condition. It's because of where they are spiritually, and they have a difficult time sitting among other people who they might feel by their very presence is like a judgment against their own lives. Actually, that is a fact. That's part of the reason why I didn't want to go to church, is because I felt like I was so undeserving, such a sinner, that I could not fit in that environment. But that mindset had to be changed. So let's go back.
That's really the truth of it. I'm not convinced that that's a good thing, because I do believe, and I've had good conversations about this with Jonathan Pageau, I do believe that communal return to the source of the community's ethics is actually a necessary thing. And maybe I'm atoning for my past sins by doing these biblical lectures at the moment, which is something that's communal. And then because there's also something about going where a bunch of other people are to reaffirm your commitment to the good that you're all aiming at, that's got some power in it. And I don't think that that's something that we should forego. I think it's dangerous. I mean, look, even if you're cynical about church, and I guess I would put myself in that category, it's certainly the case that communal church going in the 1950s, say, provided the average person with at least an hour a week where they were contemplating, no matter how poorly, the purpose of ethics in life. And the idea of a higher purpose and a higher meaning in life. And you got to think that spending an hour a week thinking about that is better than never doing it at all. I don't know how to that tradition can be revivified in a meaningful way. But I really do think it's a catastrophe that we've lost it, because we don't have a center, an ethical center that holds our community together. And the consequence of that is that we're fragmenting quite badly. But what you see there is if you view someone with love, then it's incumbent upon you to treat them as if they're valuable.
That's a very powerful statement here, right? If you treat someone with love, it is then incumbent upon you to treat them as if they're valuable. And you kind of also have to understand what it means to have a relationship with God as well, because it is through the relationship with God that we find the worth and the value for those around us. If you cancel God, as the atheist man will do, you cancel God a picture. Yes, you can love someone and appreciate them, but not to the degree of which God actually is expecting us to love our neighbors as ourselves concept. It doesn't necessarily apply correctly. And I think the concept of evolution and all that not only gets rid of God, it also destroys the concept of morality, which leads to the point where we all can mistreat each other, right? If I am a monkey, if I came from nothing, my life has no meaning. So why do I need to treat you with any purpose or any respect as if you are something valuable? What's the point? So the concept of ethics is also under attack through through those false narratives as well. So I think Jordan Peterson is on point.
The more you treat other people as if they're valuable, the better person you are. That just comes along for the ride in some sense. So none of that seems questionable to me. That seems solid. And so then maybe the more love you view other people with, the higher the moral demand that's placed on you. And then I would say too, well then, that's another reason why it's so important to be truthful and in some sense to be good, because it isn't obvious to me that you can withstand that moral load if you're compromised by too much sin. It's too much. And that's another thing that we're not very good.
That's a very good point, right? The more a person lives in sin, the more difficult it is for them to love their neighbor. The truth is, when you study the root of sin, right, it is centered on selfishness. Every time a person sin is because they are pleasing, is self-pleasing, is self-exaltation. It is something that a person does that is outside of love. Love is other-centered, right? But sin is self-centered. So this concept of self-centeredness, which really is law-breaking, transgression, or iniquity, when it is practiced, it becomes almost impossible, especially when we remain in that practice. It becomes almost impossible to love people the way we should. And that's why when a person commits adultery or smoke and beats on his wife, and a woman goes out there and have children and have abortion and all that, right? It really comes back to the root of all things: selfishness, pride, self-centeredness, self-worship. It's this idea that is driving us to make these decisions. So as long as this love for self is placed above love for men, love for God, we're going to have a very difficult time loving each other correctly.
Good at teaching young people about, we shouldn't do that. It's like there's a sanctimonious authority that goes along with that that's the wrong tone. It's more like, I don't know how you lay it out properly, but you tell people that you love how to avoid the road to hell. And you don't do that because you're shaking your finger at them or because you're a moral authority. You do it because you don't want them to burn.
You see, that's something that is very difficult for many of us to do, even in ministry. And every now and then we kind of have to tell people that truth, is that, this is very emotional, by the way. The fact is, if a person chooses not to repent and accept the gift of God, the next destination is hell. And that is not what God wants for any of us. But the sad reality is, many people are going to go there. You see, the thing is, escape for your life, run into the arms of Jesus, escape what is coming. Because once if a person chooses to reject the gift of God, there's only one other option. He has to pay for his own sin, and that's hellfire. And it's a fact.
And I think there's too much of the moral authority still in the church, and not enough of the love that helps people avoid the fire.
I agree with that. And I think there's a lot of people who do preach this kind of turn or burn concept kind of gospel. Is they are trying to scare people into the arms of Jesus. It doesn't work like that. While it is true that we shouldn't downplay the concept of hell, but we should also promote the value of love to a much higher degree, so that individuals can choose for themselves which one they're going to accept. So that's why if you hear in my channel here, I'm hoping that's what I do when I spend time either doing a reaction video, that you come off with hope, faith, and love, rather than the fear of condemnation. And this is not to say I don't preach it. This is not to say I don't tell people these things. Certainly my church hear it all the time. But I do it in a different spirit. I do it wrapped up in the love of God, with the hope people will choose the love of God rather than the fear of damnation.
Tammy, my wife, has always taken the idea of truth very seriously. Her recent brush with death has deepened her religious sense and impelled her towards a life that's more consciously focused on service to others, her family in particular, but not only her family, people beyond the family. And I also think that's a function to some degree of our stage of life. She's a grandmother now, and her children are grown and able to take care of themselves, and so she can turn her attention to other people, maybe farther afield from the immediate family. I'm watching what she's doing and listening to her and watching her practical application of her faith, and that affects me just as everything she does affects me, because I watch what she does and take it seriously.
Very amazing, though, like the power of testimonies that others could have on your life. I got a lot of relationship and connection with others who have been, played a crucial role in my personal life as well in becoming a Christian. Don't underestimate the power of influence that others could have on your life in turning your life around in a positive way for God. Don't underestimate the power of influence that you are having on people's life if you are a Bible-believing Christian. You just don't know. Just keep on setting that example. Just keep on being the Christ-like individual that God has made you to be. Just keep on loving and caring. Just in time, you might not realize it, God has a way of using your life experience as a mean to turn people around to love him. So keep on trusting.
Her recent actions have indicated she's helped a number of people quite substantially, the group that she's been communicating with, and all of that's very interesting to me. She's showing me, I've taken the idea of God seriously for a very long time. And I've said on multiple occasions that I try to act as though God exists, and that's essentially my definition of belief. When people say, do you believe in God? Belief is a multidimensional word. And one question is, well, what do you mean by believe? And for me, the proof of belief is to be found in action. And I decided that I would act as if God existed a long while back. And of course, I'm imperfect in that, inevitably. Now, she's doing that more explicitly as well. She wasn't doing it quite well to begin with, but she's doing it more explicitly and also more within the confines of traditional religious conceptions.
That is actually very deep. It's more than just believing in living a good life, because living a good life, which a lot of people think that if I live a good enough and decent life before the eyes of God, therefore that means I'm deemed to be a good enough individual to be saved by God. False, false, false. It is not the life you live particularly that saves you. It is the life that Christ lived. Now, once you accept Jesus Christ, of course, you got to live a Christian life. You got to walk by faith and obedient, law-abiding citizen. You got to be. But it is not the life you live that really saves you here. And a lot of people who are not religious will think because I'm good enough, I fed the poor, I'm just a nice enough person, I'm going to be saved. But the scripture says, not by works of righteousness which you have done, it is according to his mercy that we are saved. It is not by works, but it is by the grace of God. It is by grace and faith in his righteousness that we are saved, not the things that we do. It is good to understand the huge difference between the two.
Although she's not attending church, she's associating with a number of people who are formally religious, and all of that's informing the way that she conducts herself.
Absolutely.
Watching her do that has also highlighted for me the missing praxis in Western Christianity. If you want to be a Christian, let's say, if you think that's necessary, it's not exactly obvious what you should do. You should go to church, but that's not enough, I don't think. I find it useful to contemplate the highest good on a continual basis. I'm trying to keep myself oriented in that direction. It's a religious orientation, fundamentally.
Yeah.
It's an overwhelming orientation. But there's no escaping the questions of the ultimate meaning of life.
And I think that is the big question that all of us have to wrestle with, the ultimate meaning of life. What is the purpose of my existence as an individual? So where do we go from here as far as either trusting? What kind of decision? That's going to change your perspective completely as an individual once you understand the purpose why God created you and why you exist in this world. And I think unless you find and discover this fact from the heart of God, you will always live a life outside of his will and always end up unhappy. And that is, by the way, my personal experience as well.
I'm not an atheist anymore because I don't look at the world that way anymore. I'm not a materialist anymore. I don't think the world's made out of matter. I think it's made out of what matters. It's made out of meaning. What we orient towards unconsciously, which means what captures our attention, is meaning, and it captures our attention before we know what it is. The brain acts as if the world's made out of information or made out of meaning. Who would have the audacity to claim that they believed in God? If they examined the way they lived, who would dare say that? To believe, you think, to believe in a Christian sense, to actually, this is why Nietzsche said there was only ever one Christian, and that was Christ. To have the audacity to claim that means that you live it out fully. And that's an unbearable task in some sense.
Yeah.
To be able to accept the structure of existence, the suffering that goes along with it, and the disappointment and the betrayal, and to nonetheless act properly, right? To aim at the good with all your heart, right? To dispense with the malevolence and your desire for destruction and revenge and all of that, and to face things courageously and to tell the truth, to speak the truth and to act it out. That's what it means to believe. That's what it means. Mm-hmm. It doesn't mean to state it.
Yeah.
It means to act it out.
That's true. That's a lot of people like to do this, man. And I found myself, being guilty of this as well. Before I even became a Christian, I always used to say, I believe in God. I believe that God exists, kind of thing. Kind of what I meant. I believe somewhere in the cosmos, this higher power exists. But that belief had no real substance behind that, because I was the same individual who would lie and cheat, who would steal and all that. But I would still cover it up with a Christian veneer. Beautiful statements such as, I believe, because I was once raised in the church. I was raised Catholic, even though I've left the church for years. But I used to say, even in the midst of my sins, listening to all kind of crazy music at the club, drinking alcohol, smoking weed, cheating on girlfriends, sleeping around with all these different crazy stuff, I would still come out with this braggadocious attitude. I believe. So self-deceived. So self-deceived. But how many of us are doing the same thing?
And unless you act it out, you should be very careful about claiming it.
Yeah.
And so I've never been comfortable saying anything other than I try to act as if God exists, because God only knows what you'd be if you truly believed. I mean, if you think about it in some sense, that's the central idea in Christianity, is that if you were capable of believing, it would be a transfiguring event.
Yeah.
A truly transfiguring event. And I know people experience that to one degree or another. But we have no idea what the limit of that is. And we have no idea what the possibility is within each person if they lived a life that was maximally courageous and maximally truthful. You know, because maybe you're running at 60% or 70% or 20% and at cross purposes to yourself. God only knows what you'd be if you believed. And so, well, I try to act like I believe, but I'd never claim that I manage it. So you can think about Christ from a psychological perspective, and my critic, this particular critic that I've been reading, said, well, that doesn't differentiate Christ much from a whole sequence of dying and resurrecting mythological gods. And of course, people have made that claim in comparative religion. Joseph Campbell did that, and Jung to a lesser degree, I would say, but Campbell did that. But the difference, and C.S. Lewis pointed this out as well, the difference between those mythological gods and Christ was that there's a representation of, there's a historical representation of his existence as well. Now you can debate whether or not that's genuine. You can debate about whether or not he actually lived and whether there's credible objective evidence for that, but it doesn't matter in some sense because it does, but there's a sense in which it doesn't matter because there's still a historical story. And so what you have in the figure of Christ is an actual person who actually lived plus a myth. And in some sense, Christ is the union of those two things. The problem is I probably believe that, but I don't know. I'm amazed at my own belief and I don't understand it. Because I've seen.
I'm gonna pause right here. It's gonna get emotional. Again, that's been a really one of those points that a lot of people who do not believe atheists will use in comparison to Christ, and saying that Christ is just another one of those mythical, gods that had existed back then and had died and this and that. There are several reasons. I love the fact he's speaking about the historical difference with Christ's existence and the accounts confirming his death has been completely different. Another thing that to keep in mind, you cannot put Christ in the same category as these other man-made gods. A lot of these legends, stories have not really fully been confirmed. A lot of them are man-made. A lot of them has been reinterpreted to somewhat confuse people about the real identity of Christ and his sacrifice as well. That's been proven to be a fact. And a lot of these people who will say these stories also seem to parallel the same thing as if in comparison to Christ's sacrifice, they have yet to give you the footnotes. They have yet to give you the real facts and the evidence and the historical account of these claims. It has not been proven. A lot of it are man-made. A lot of them are statements that are made just to confuse the masses. Not exactly the same thing. And one other thing to keep in mind as well, the evidence for Christ's death and crucifixion and resurrection is out of this world. It is so undeniable. Over 500 eyewitnesses account. Books have been written concerning this matter. The story of an empty tomb and all of that speaks volume of the fact that Christ's death was different. But it also, to top things off, it is the identity of Christ to me that has a lot more value. It's not just whether or not he did die, where a lot of people have died for things that they believed in. But what makes Christ different, what makes Jesus different, is the fact that he is the Son of God. And in context of him being the Son, when you go to John chapter 1, verses 1 to 3, it tells us that in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. And all things were made by him. Without him was not anything made that was made. So in essence, Jesus is the creator of heaven and earth. So he's the one, the creator, came to earth to die for creation. that places Jesus in a whole different category than these other man-made, self-centered mythological gods. We should never, never compare Christ to one of these, because he is not one of them.
Sometimes the objective world and the narrative world touch. You know, that's Jungian synchronicity. And I've seen that many times in my own life. And so in some sense, I believe it's undeniable. You know, we have a narrative sense of the world. For me, that's been the world of morality. That's the world that tells us how to act. It's real. Like, we treat it like it's real. It's not the objective world. But the narrative and the objective world touch. And the ultimate example of that, in principle, is supposed to be Christ. But I don't know what to... that seems to me oddly plausible. But I still don't know what to make of it. It's too... partly because it's too terrifying a reality to fully believe. I don't even know what would happen to you if you fully believed it.
But are you a prophet?
And, see, to say yes or no, I have to think about how... I have to think about how I might be conceptualized, how what I'm doing might be conceptualized. No, I think I see myself as a psychologist, and fundamentally, I am a psychologist. I'm a behavioral psychologist, and I got very interested in psychoanalytic thinking, especially the Jungian variants, and I'm a professor, and I'm doing that, you know, on a much larger stage, let's say. But that's really what I'm doing, and so it's a combination of those two things. And I speak about religious matters, but I don't see myself as a religious leader. I don't want to make that. God lift from me the intolerable burden of my ignorance, arrogance, willful blindness, bitterness, and resentment. As I pray that others rise above the same faults and temptations. I watched Fox News release a message this week. There are terrible things afoot under the surface of our society, and the perpetrators are coming for you and coming for us. And then I watched the Democrats respond in panic and anger, saying, there are terrible things afoot under the surface of our society, and the perpetrators are coming for you, coming for us. Are there terrible things afoot, bubbling under the surface? Is something coming for you?
Yes.
And for us?
I can see it.
Ask yourself how true that is of yourself and your own life. Have you addressed all that? Are you concerning yourself with the dust in your enemy's eyes instead of attending to the filth that obscures your own sight? Do we want accusation, suspicion, discord, derision, and hatred? Or the peace and prosperity and happiness that beckons to us at this moment like never before? Who's the enemy here? Is it the basket of deplorables? Is it the freaks and the queers? Is it the plumbers and carpenters and tradesmen and managers who work honestly and diligently during the day, and the soldiers who stalwartly defend the borders and protect us? Is it the artists and visionaries whose expressions of unbridled creativity entertain and rejuvenate us, and who continually offer to us an unending panoply of technological miracle? Is it the institutions that guide and protect us, that so many lived and died to erect and establish, which for all their faults have served us so well? Do we want revenge or justice? Do we want contempt or mercy? Do we want war or peace? And what are you aiming at in your heart of hearts? I see even the best of men degenerating into the exchange of blows I see even the best of men identifying the enemy in our neighbors and friends.
Yeah.
I see even the best of men falling prey to cowardice and self-righteous anger. It needs to stop.
Yes, it does.
I need to stop. You need to stop before it's too late. Who is the enemy here? The snake in your heart? The lies on your tongue? The arrogance of your intellect?
Yep.
The cowardice of our refusal to see?
Yep. That's the
The
enemy.
enemy is that which divides to sow discord. The enemy is the pride and the fear that stops us from lending a hand across the divide. The enemy is the great and eternal adversary of mankind.
Mercy.
And if we demonize our brothers, our comrades in arms, do we not precisely call that dread spirit forth? Have we not yet learned?
Yeah, not.
Courage,
Courage.
trust, truth, love, even unto your enemy, which is yourself.
Yep.
God, forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us. May what is highest guide our vision. May what is highest open our ears. May what is highest guide our tongues. And may we pray, fearful of the hell we could so easily and carelessly create. Deliver us from evil. Shine a light into the corners of our dark hearts. For thine is the kingdom, the power and the glory, forever and ever. Amen.
Yeah, man. Amazing, guys. Absolutely amazing. Appreciate the content. Guys, would you like to see more of this type of reaction here? I know he gets very spiritual. He goes really deep, and I'm hoping the message was very clear. I don't want to add to the man's word. He said everything that needed to be said. I want you to think about what was said. Comment below. Tell me your thoughts and perspective. If I may add one single verse, it will be this one. Jesus says in the book of Matthew 16, verse 16. Let's read from verse 15 to 16. Go into all the world and preach the gospel, right, to the whole creation. Whosoever believe and is baptized shall be saved. Class number 1. Whosoever does not believe will be condemned. Well, I don't know. Which group do you want to be a part of? Those who are going to be saved by the grace of Christ? Or those who are going to be condemned because we chose not to believe in that grace? That decision is yours. Thank you for listening, friend. God bless you. And as always, look unto Jesus and live by faith. Have a good one. Bye.